everyone, and welcome back to 9 Acre Talk podcast.
Hello.
How are you all doing today?
As you can see, we're not on the 9.
No, we're trying to multitask today. For those listening, we are not currently at the 9. But we knew we owed you a podcast, so we thought we would multitask and bring one to you guys today. Nana.
Yeah.
How's things been going on the 9 acres for you?
They've been going pretty good. I got to hang out with the farm boss yesterday and get some stuff done with her.
I mean, the farm boss is like, she was not going to be for Nana doing stuff in the house. She was like, we need to go feed the chickens.
Yeah.
And when Nana said, well, the chickens already have hanging feeders and waters, and so they're okay, she was not for that.
No. She wasn't impressed with me that we had already fed and watered.
But of course, the most exciting news for the 9 is the farm boss is going to get a new
baby sissy tomorrow.
Baby sissy.
Yes.
So we are anxiously awaiting that.
Yes.
We
nothing better than the blessing of a new grandbaby.
Yes, amen. So we have been talking on the 9 Acre podcast about all different types to go along with small farm or homesteading. And the last podcast we shared with you what we had done at the Mid-American YouTube meetup and what we gained from it and took away. The episode before that, we talked about land and how big of a homestead to buy and things to take in consideration there.
So, Dale.
Yo.
What is the definition of homestead?
Homesteading, roughly, I'm going to give you a rough definition, is someone who actively preserves and stores up food supplies, gardens, raises most of their food themselves, prepares their homestead or their household for anything that may come up, and can be someone who lives off grid, produces their own electricity and relies nothing on grid. So if that describes you at all, you could consider yourself a homesteader.
Yeah. Awesome.
Now, the bigger question to me, Lisa, is why do you homestead?
Well, we homestead to be more self-sufficient for ourselves and for our children.
And guys, it's a part of our life because we live in an extremely rural environment. It's 30 miles to any store from our house. In fact, we're traveling 30 miles right now to go to town. But so you're not going to run to the grocery store and grab every little thing.
We can't say,
every night,
I don't have a tomato.
Oh no,
I'll just run down to the store. No,
exactly, it's not going to happen. So I'll say,
oh man, I don't have a tomato. I'll run out to the garden.
Yeah. So having that own grocery in your backyard or stored up on the shelves is so reassuring to you. Not to mention, you can typically save money, and it's budget friendly. It's easier to budget when you're buying things in bulk, or if you are feeding out, say, an animal that you're going to process, You can extend that money over a greater time period of your output cost before you process that animal. So you're not going to just go, oh, well, I'm going to go buy 100 pounds of meat tomorrow. Well, for most of us, we can't afford to do that.
Exactly.
But if we look at it in a greater scheme, that we are going to feed that animal out and get it to a freezer date or a processing date, then
save up.
We can save up for just that processing, and then the price of the animal itself, you've already took care of all of that. So in the long run, it extends out our budget and is easier for us to budget.
Right.
Not to mention, let's not even talk about the fact, or let's talk about the fact that how much more secure is your food source, and how you know the clean ingredients going in it.
Yeah. It's so, to me, growing your own, whether it be protein or veggies or whatever, it tastes so much better.
Yeah, it does.
It's so much more flavorful.
I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again and again. I was one that I thought fried chicken was fried chicken was fried chicken. It didn't matter where you bought it, until the very first time that we raised Cornish crossed on pasture and processed them ourselves. And that very first one we cooked, I was like, there is a major difference.
He will not buy chicken from the store now at all.
Not going to buy chicken from the store. The only thing that it did really bad for me was I used to love to go to a fried chicken restaurant, and now I don't particularly like it. It's not as good as it is at home. Same way with pork. Pork is big for us.
Yes.
There is a big difference. We used to buy pork before we started raising hogs ourselves, and there is a humongous difference between our home-raised pork and what you buy in the store.
Like our home-raised pork chops, you can cut them with a fork.
Yes, you can.
You buy them at the grocery store, and you have to use a knife. It's just, and we cook them exactly the same.
Yeah, we don't change cooking techniques.
I mean, sometimes we do. But
sometimes we do if it was a purchased one, but
still,
we don't purchase hardly any anymore.
Yeah,
so
there's just a huge difference.
We also know the beef does make a big difference. We've raised beef on the homestead before, and
you take a pound of beef that we grew ourselves, ground beef, and you take a pound of ground beef that you buy at the grocery store. At the end of the day, at the end of cooking, you still almost have a pound of ground beef of what we raised. At the end of cooking of the store-bought, you might have a half a pound.
We also know that from raising vegetables ourselves, that the product that we get is so much better.
Yeah.
The vegetable itself is fresher tasting, cleaner tasting. We know exactly what has been done with that vegetable plant, that fruit.
Yeah, so
we know it doesn't have spray on it because we don't spray in our garden.
Pick the tomato off the vine at home and eat it. I can't get a tomato at the grocery store and just eat it without washing.
Don't ever do that. Always wash whatever you get from the grocery store. They add color additives. They add all kinds of different chemicals to it to keep it fresh looking, make it longer shelf stable. You don't know what they've done to it to make it that perfect tomato.
Right.
I mean, now that is one thing that you do have to learn is you're not going to raise the perfect tomato.
No.
I mean, you may raise one or two, but the majority of them are going to be ugly tomatoes.
Yeah.
Which, when it comes to Old Dale, ugly tomatoes
They're
and
usually
bacon
the most tastier ones.
are the most tasty ones. I love my ugly tomatoes.
Yeah.
But the same way, green beans, we love raising fresh green beans. We eat a lot of them fresh. We have put some up in freezer before. This year, we're planning on canning.
Yep.
And
can, freeze, whatever we got to do.
Future episodes, we'll talk more about storage of the things that you put up, but so I feel like we've kind of veered a little bit off the subject, but why do you homestead?
But that's why we homestead.
That's why we're homesteading. So why should you as an individual homestead? Well, I think you take into account everything that we've been talking about there.
Yeah.
The food security, the safety in the food that you eat, the fact that it is more budget friendly, and those all add up to good reasons to homestead. Let's also look at the fact that homesteading used to be normal.
Yes.
It used to be normal for people to do
every family would
what
do
we
it.
are doing. For some reason, over a couple generations, we got away from it.
Yeah.
The convenience lifestyle of America, we've got away from what our roots are.
Yeah.
And honestly, as homesteading started disappearing, what started appearing? Well, people living under debt, right? People are really willing to go to the grocery store or the big box store and spend a majority of their paycheck on buying, and not only just buying groceries, but buying overly processed groceries that are extremely shelf stable for way past what they should be.
Yeah. And all that stuff in there that's not good for you.
The other thing that we can look at, and this isn't me throwing rocks at anybody because I'm in that category, is as a nation, as we have ventured away from homesteading, what has happened to our nation health-wise? We've all become overweight. We have
unhealthy.
More health problems than what we had before. More diabetes. Some of these other like off-the-wall disorders and diseases that you hear about have all of a sudden started appearing. And, you know, I'm not throwing rocks at farmers. I grew up as a farmer. I know my family, what we did was, you know, the best of the ability we could do for a safe product. Unfortunately, like we raised a lot of cattle, but we only raised them to 600 to 700 pounds, or what's considered a yearling. At that point, we sold those, and they were bought by, who knows, someone else that then took them, fed them out to then be processed and put into the market. So we don't know what happens to them after that. Now, we won't even get into the other side of that coin till later episodes, but
if we even get to it.
If we even get to it.
It's kind of touchy.
That's a touchy subject for sure. But the other thing about homesteading is it's a simpler way of life.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Instead of the constant hustle and bustle and having to work multiple jobs in order to pay for all of that, most of us, you know, you spend more time at home.
You know, and it's just, I don't know, there's something about, it's just relaxing about getting your hands in the dirt.
yeah, gardening, for a lot of people, I know Nana is one for sure. She loves to get her hands in the dirt and garden. And it's something that we had gotten away from and we've got back into. You know, it's also, as an individual,
ooh, a snake.
It's way better off health-wise to be outside gardening.
Yeah, sun's good for you.
For one, you can get the sun. For two, it's, Nana's on a good point, that grounding, you know, you actually absorb and, you
kick
know,
off
microbes
and, get your
stuff
feet
like
in the
that.
dirt and...
You know, that there is such a thing as being too clean.
Yes.
You know, you guys can do your own research on that, but I know I can give you examples of mothers that never let their children ever play in the mud, never let them get dirty, never let them be exposed to anyone else. And I'm not talking about someone who had a health concern. I'm talking just a normal, healthy
constantly putting
child, constantly using that antibacterial gel and hand soap and hand sanitizer.
It kills the good bugs.
And you know what we observe from things like that? Those people, their children tend to be sicker than the ones who aren't exposed to all that stuff.
Yeah.
Because their immune system doesn't see it gradually to build up immunity to it and fight it off. And that's where our nation ends up into things where when a certain bug comes through, virus, bacterial, whatever, a certain group of individuals cannot fight that off.
Yeah.
Now, when we talk about why do you homestead, you know, a person needs to think about, does that mean I have to have that ground? Do I have to have a big piece of acreage?
No, you could have an acre. You could have a half acre. You could just have a city lot.
You could have a city lot.
And
some of the, what I would call some of the strongest homesteaders I have seen, they utilize a city lot.
They live in the city.
But instead of having manicured yards and grass that they just mow week after week after week, they have gardens and raised bed gardens and windowsill gardens and their back patio, instead of just being a big area where they sit around and hang out, they have planters and plants incorporated. And you know, some people think, ooh, I'm going to have plants where I'm going to socialize and do all that kind of stuff. Well, they utilize and they plant herbs and things in those that help keep the bugs away and stuff like that. So, you know, that is homesteading at its essential level.
Yes.
You know, I think a lot of us have got this in our mind that the only way I'm going to homestead is I have to go buy a bare piece of ground and I have to start from scratch.
Nope, that is not the
contrary to that belief, that's the furthest thing from the truth there is.
Honestly, if you live in an apartment and you have a windowsill, you can homestead right there.
You can grow a lot of your own.
Yeah.
Go to the farmer's market and take advantage of what others have in overproduction. Not only that, you know, I don't care what urban environment you are, you don't have to drive very far out of the urban environment and you're in rural areas. And you can find sources of people who have home-raised, you know, chickens or beef or pork. And then get you a canner and start canning you some ugly chicken and some ugly pork and putting away things like that in a pantry, that if the power goes out because the whole, you know, grid goes down, in the middle of town. You get an ice storm or whatever.
All you got to do is pop the top and you can have it. It's ready. It's shelf stable. It's ready for you to eat.
Yeah. So I'm not saying the, prepping lifestyle has become, this big deal. These extreme preppers. Well, you know what a prepper actually was to begin with? They were a homesteader. Yeah. So if the prepping lifestyle, is something you're into, your first step is to become a homesteader.
And I mean, pretty much they're still homesteaders.
They're still homesteaders.
They just consider themselves preppers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, I know there's other things that go along with prepping.
Right.
But when it comes to food and food security, number one rule is you are putting up and preserving food. So I know that we're not reinventing the wheel with this talk here, and it has probably been hashed over again and again and again.
Yeah.
But for some people who are just now getting into it, or are walking that line of, am I a homesteader even though I live in town? Let us reassure you, if you're doing anything along that line of raising your own food, have a garden in the backyard, you're canning, you're freezing, you're freeze drying, you're dehydrating and putting away food stores, you're homesteading.
You can darn near homestead anywhere you're at.
That's right. So next time we come back together, look for more talks along small farming, homesteading, subject,
or whatever.
maybe along those lines. Sure, sit down, have a cup of coffee or a glass of tea, and we'll talk.
Yep.
So until next time, guys, farm on.
Keep strong.
We love you.
And so does God.